Okay, so should Poland just stop playing football? Now, that might be a little bit of an overreaction to their latest tournament catastrophe. I know, but a lot of people are wondering what's the point, and I'm with them because I've been here long enough to have watched about the last 20 years of Polish football at the highest international level, and I have the same questions other people have. Like, why are they so bad for so long? Why can't they advance out of a group? What's the problem, basically? And I've put together a little bit of a historical case here with some statistics I want to throw out there and just kind of discuss generally. But before we do, Josh, let me get your take on this as a Tottenham Hotspur supporter, and as long-suffering, I guess, as an England supporter as well. You know something about disappointment and heartbreak. Is this just part of being a fan, or is there something unique about the Polish national team situation that kind of raises questions?
Well, I mean, we can very easily kind of offend just about everybody, depending.
Yeah, for sure.
I think there's, and I really have to be very cautious saying this, but there seems to be something almost built into the national psyche that is, on the one hand, fiercely proud, but on the other, fully aware that the next disappointment or tragedy or invasion is just around the corner.
I think it's the natural you're right. The natural Polish cynicism combined with the justified cynicism that they've learned from the team over the last few decades. I think that's what we're seeing now.
And I mean, you've also got the thing. I mean, inevitably we're going to talk about their star striker, who is, I think by any reasonable metric, probably in the top 3 footballers in the world, and. The team is criticised if he's not playing well enough. The team is criticised because no one is up to his standard. They can't give him the service that he needs. And, I mean, they wouldn't be where they are at all without him.
Yeah, and it's a team game, but
he can't.
He's 1 of 11 on the pitch. Gabby, let me bring you in here. I'll just be blunt. Is there anything you can contribute to a discussion about the Polish national football team?
Well, I'd like to say that I think a lot of it's to do with investment in the national sport itself. Like, if you're not investing in the players on the ground level in the little communities, then you're never really going to get a good team going, because the star players are always going to be playing abroad somewhere.
Okay, you know what? You and I have a rare bit of agreement here, actually. I'm with you on that. But let me save that point. Let me save that for later, because I'll come back to that later. First of all, okay, I'm going to lay this out like a prosecutor in court. I'm making the case for, at a minimum, the disbanding of the Polish national team, possibly the imprisonment of the Polish national team, based on the following facts. So just follow me here. Now, before I get into this tragicomic history, I just want to acknowledge that, yes, we know that Poland had a golden age in the 70s, gold medalist in 1972, 3rd place at the World Cup in 74, 3rd place at the World Cup in 78. Very impressive, 6, 7, 8 year run, and we know that, but that was a long time ago. So let me start the case against them. Again, my prosecutor's case. Just in the 20th century, since 2002, starting with the World Cup in 2002, follow me as I go through this really awful, awful history of the Polish national football team. Okay, so 2002 was the World Cup in South Korea and Japan. This was Poland's first time qualifying for the World Cup since the 1986 Cup in Mexico. They were in a group, Poland was in a group of South Korea, the United States, and Portugal. And I can remember the media just almost laughing out loud. Oh my God, United States, they don't even know what football is. In South Korea, oh, it's a joke. Okay, Portugal's okay, but we're definitely going to advance out of this group. Well, guess what? Poland lost the opening match with South Korea. Now, let me just acknowledge in a sidebar that I know, and you listening might know as well, that South Korea did suspiciously well in that World Cup, like conspiracy theory well in that World Cup. Yeah, I know that. But still, they beat Poland fair and square. Opening match. So Poland shocked in the opening match. They go on to finish last in the group. This is a group that they were sure they were going to get out of because it was such a joke, but finished dead last in the group. South Korea South Korea and America advanced. So Portugal went home as well, which was a shock too.
Well, yeah, but that's actually, this is typical of this kind of moaning mentality, is that, and I see this among a lot of Spurs fans, they were whinging about what a miserable season it was, kind of, forgetting that, Liverpool got beaten 7-2 by Aston Villa, and and they were the last year's champions. So I mean, Portugal being sent home at the end of the group stages with their tails between their legs.
Fortunes changed.
Well, what can you say, if anything, apart from the game is unpredictable?
Let me just add very quickly.
Unless you're South Korea.
Again, some of you listening will recall this. In that qualifying campaign for that 2002 World Cup, again, Poland's first World Cup since '86, a guy named Emmanuel Olisadebe scored about 35% of all the Polish goals. Now, you might guess from his name, Emmanuel Olisadebe, not really a Polish guy, but he married a Polish woman, and his Polish citizenship was literally accelerated by the president himself. Like they said, okay, listen, you need to sign this passport right now. They shoved a Polish passport in his hands, put him on the national team, and he scored almost 40% of the qualifying goals. So the only reason Poland was in the World Cup was because of a Nigerian guy on their team. But anyway, moving on. 2004 Euros did not qualify. Poland did not qualify despite being in the same qualifying group as San Marino and Latvia. Just want to point that out. 2006 World Cup in Germany. They're in a group with Germany. Once again, misfortune of being in a group with the host country. In a group with Germany, Ecuador, and Costa Rica. And again, I can remember the Polish media. Oh my God, Ecuador, what a joke. Are you kidding me? We're going to crush them 15-0. Well, guess what? Opening match against Ecuador, they lost. So once again, they lose their opening match. And once again, they lost. They finished not last in the group, but third. They finished third in the group behind Germany, Ecuador, and ahead of Costa Rica.
And this was in
2006.
Okay, so that's an improvement. They're
two World Cups this century so far, lost both opening matches, finished last in the group once, third in the group the next time. 2008 European Championships hosted in Austria and Switzerland. Strangely enough, I did not know this, Josh. 2008 was the first time Poland ever qualified for the Euros. Did you know that? This is a competition that goes back to 1958, and Poland had never qualified for the Euros before.
I think, if only because there was just this unbelievable level of excitement that one could kind of feel when the competition started because Poland was actually taking part.
So 2008 Euros, they're in a group with Germany, again, Croatia, and Austria. Now, in fairness, that's a fairly tough group. They lost their opening match against Germany. Once again, opening match, a loss. They finished last in the group. 2010 World Cup in South Africa did not qualify. They finished fifth in the qualifying group, only above San Marino, taking 11 points from 10 matches. 2012 Euros. Now, they qualified for this because they were the host country. They didn't have to go through the actual qualification process. Poland co-hosted the games, of course, along with the Ukraine, so they qualified automatically. They were in a group with the Czech Republic, Greece, and Russia. In a break with tradition, they drew the opening match with Greece instead of losing, but they did finish last in the group with 2 points from 2 draws. So the host country, last in the group, they go home after 3 matches. 2014 World Cup in Brazil did not qualify. They finished 4th in their qualifying group, just behind Montenegro and a point ahead of Moldova.
Oh dear.
Humiliating. 2016 Euros in France. In a group with Germany, again, Ukraine and Northern Ireland. Poland finished 2nd in the group, but tied on 7 points with Germany, but they lost the head-to-head tiebreaker. Now, the 2016 Euros in France, this was the huge, great exception to the rule. This is where somehow the stars and the planets aligned, everything went right, and Poland actually advanced out of the group to the knockout stage. They beat Switzerland on penalties and then lost to eventual champion Portugal on penalties in the quarterfinal. So a very respectable performance, very respectable result, all the way to the quarters, losing to the eventual champion
Can I interrupt you at that point? Because I remember watching that game against Portugal with great excitement and thinking this could really be, because Portugal absolutely in their pomp at the time with obviously Cristiano Ronaldo, who is still playing for them and knocking them in, but right at his peak, and Poland came out of the blocks like startled wolves, really. They scored a goal very, very quickly. It was a terrific goal, really well worked. And I was thinking, Jesus, if they carry on like this, they're going to they're going to destroy Portugal 6-0. And of course, obviously the collective vibe went around the team like kind of, hey, chill, we've got this. And of course, that was it.
Chilled too much.
Yeah.
So 2016, again, the break from form, very, very great performance. But in 2018, they returned to form. Of course, that's the World Cup, the World Cup in Russia. Poland is in a group with Colombia, Japan, and Senegal. Once again, I remember the Polish media. Senegal, Japan, come on. They might as well give us the trophy now. It's a gimme. It's easy. We have a clear path to the final. Well, guess what? Poland lost their opening match against Senegal. And they finished last in the group once again. And that brings us, of course, to Euro 2020, also known as Euro 2021. It's kind of weird. But anyway, as you know, they're in a group with Slovakia, Sweden, and Spain. They lose their opening match against Slovakia. That's a country that has 1/10 the population as Poland. And they finished last in their group with 1 point. So let's summarize here. In the 10 tournaments this century... 10 tournaments this century, 5 World Cups, 5 European Championships, did not qualify for 3 of them. Of the 7 tournaments they did qualify for, they failed to make it out of the group 6 times. And of those 6 times, they finished last in the group 5 times. Of the 7 tournaments they have qualified for, they have lost their opening match 5 times. Now, I know mathematically, I guess they're all the same, Josh, but losing your opening match, for whatever reason, psychological or superstitious, puts you in a deep hole that it's hard to get out of.
Yes.
Again, mathematically, it doesn't make sense, but it's true. And let me summarize Poland's performance in the recent European Championships. 24 teams took part, which was an expansion from the previous 16, I think, right? So 24 teams took part in the Euros. That's still going on as we speak, actually. 2 teams out of the 24 finished with 0 points. That's Turkey and North Macedonia, also known as Macedonia. 2 teams finished with 1 point. That's Poland and Scotland. So 20 of the 24 teams finished with at least 2 points in the group stage. I mean, that's embarrassing company. Embarrassing company. Did you guys see any of the North Macedonian matches? They were playing with passion and energy. I mean, what they lacked in skill, they kind of made up for with, just determination.
Swords and cudgels.
No, Poland had none of that. So it's another unmitigated disaster. Before we get into the reasons for this, Gabby, you already mentioned investment. We'll turn to that in just a second. Josh, how can we kind of, what's your verdict on the prosecutor's case that I've presented for the dissolution of the Polish national team?
Well, you know what? I think that there is, I think this, if you like, psychological element that I mentioned about the Polish culture at large is also kind of, deeply imbued in the team itself amongst the players when they're together. And there was an interesting moment in the last match against Sweden. Lewandowski scores, an absolute belter of a goal. It has to be said, and and suddenly, suddenly the team, lifted, and they really, they put in a really, really, much improved performance until Sweden equalised again, and then of course in the dying minutes. Sweden scored a winner when it was the point when Poland were piling forward. They absolutely had to win to stand any chance, and were thus willing to. It's like we either score another goal, and we win, or if we sacrifice a goal and lose, well, that's no different to drawing because we're out anyway. And even with that kind of full on gung ho spirit, unfortunately, they conceded another goal, and that was bye bye.
Gabby?
Well, first of all, I don't know much about football. I hate to keep the stereotype going, but it's not something that I'm really into. However, as an answer to your prosecution, I would say you can't ban the Polish team. Yeah. What will people do?
Yeah.
They would be devastated. You need some hope. You take
Let me throw a couple of things out there. Now, I'm looking at it from perspective. This may or may not be fair, but you tell me what you think. I've always thought that, not just in the context of football, but generally speaking, for a country with 40 million people, or close enough to it, Poland is remarkably unaccomplished at the highest level of athletic accomplishment. Again, for having 40 million people. Let's look at football. Holland, with fewer than half as many people as Poland, look at what they do. Look at what Portugal does with a quarter of the population, right? Countries like Holland and Portugal are regularly in the mix for, being among the best European teams. Yes, they might go through a rough patch like Holland did recently, but they'll be back.
I would argue, sorry, John, I know it's irrelevant really, but I would argue that actually Belgium is even more implausible than Holland, because they really are one of the top-ranked teams in the world.
You're right. What do they have? 8, 9, 10 million people, something like that. So there's something wrong when you have 40 million people and you can't put together a better team. Now, I know it's not all about population. Otherwise, China and India would be the best at everything.
As would United States.
There was, I heard, an argument to be made about population density as well, in that if you have a denser population, for example, Brazil, Holland, Germany, where people are living close together, and your kids, you have to make do with smaller space, and your skills naturally get better because you have less space to work in.
I think that's a very good point. Also,
rather
of course,
than just hoofing a ball down the field, you know.
Also, of course, actually not really the case for Portugal, but I mean, definitely, Belgium has a pretty high urban immigrant population, and
you're trying to dribble a ball down an alleyway.
Wait, but let me go back to your earlier point, Gabby. What you said about investment and kind of early youth talent, and I think there's something to that because I don't have the stats to back this up, but I just have the impression that in Holland and Portugal and Spain and France and the UK and elsewhere, that there is a pipeline, so to speak, for identifying and nurturing young talent, right? And in Poland, I don't see the evidence of that. I don't see the youth programs. I don't see the community football pitches. I don't see the kind of the money dedicated to that. And this is a country that has a minister of sport for reasons that I've never been able to identify.
Isn't that quite normal to have a minister?
I'm not sure what they
culture or something.
Sorry?
Isn't that quite usual?
In Europe, I think it is. We don't, in America, we don't have one, and we do okay. But yeah, I mean, is that has to be part of the reason that the Polish Football Association is called the PZPN. I guess they have something like scouts and whatnot, but you don't often hear the stories of how somebody was identified at a fairly young age and their talent was nurtured and they got FaceTime with the coaching staff and opportunities for further development. You just don't see that very much. If it is happening, it's kind of
usually happens
hidden.
in Brazil, being an example, is a scout might go down to the slums and see the little kids running around and pick out kids that are genuinely good because, like I said before, smaller space to work in and nothing else to do allows them to do it. Whereas in Poland, I don't know, do you see kids kicking balls about here?
Not as much as you would like to, though. No.
Well, I don't see it at all. Basketball, yes. Ping pong, yes.
Well, I mean, I know
around the playground, yes. But football?
I know people who are active in football training and coaching of kids, and they're very, very passionate about it.
Sure.
And it's connected with schools, but generally it's outside of school time, and yeah, people. I mean, I guess they're like in their early 40s, whatever, with school age kids.
There's a very active community around youth football.
But I think what a lot of people outside of football maybe don't realise is that your Lewandowskis, your Cristiano Ronaldos, these people, their talent is spotted not long after they can walk.
Yeah, I
mean, so it's. I mean, okay. Well, to move it around a bit, there's a South Korean player who plays for Tottenham called Son Heung-min, and he is now considered to be probably in the sort of, I don't know, top 15, 20 best footballers. He's a really fantastic footballer, and his father was a professional footballer, and he's been trained since birth, really, to be not just a professional footballer, but to be at the very best. And I mean, there's a documentary about him, and it's maybe a little bit bit terrifying, quite the length that some people will go through. But the point is that the likes of your big name players of today were spotted by those big clubs, not necessarily the one they're playing for now, but at the age of 5, 6, 7.
Like a prodigy who's going to play piano, or a prodigy who's going to do whatever. I mean, they've got the talent and their family combination of their family influences, and others kind of say you are going to be the next world's chess master or violinist or what have you. It seems like the same idea.
Yeah, but the thing that we need to remember is football's actually quite, on the scale of things, it's quite a cheap sport to master. You talk about piano, so much training goes in. You need to invest in the equipment, right? Football, you need a pair of trainers and a ball. I'm wondering what the situation in Poland is, though, because the only kid, or kids, 2 of them, that I knew who were ever playing this youth football came from very wealthy families. So I wonder when it comes to like when it comes to the poor kids. You
need a family that can take you to practice all the time and take you to the matches.
Yeah,
it's a big commitment for the ones who are, for sure.
And all of that
Just
stuff.
let me direct this at you, because this is something I saw quite a lot repeated in reader comments on different websites. And on the one hand, it makes sense, but on the other hand, maybe not. It's the idea that when it comes to the Polish national team, they all have their professional club careers, obviously. They come together for a few weeks at a time. They have a kind of training camp. They work out a quick strategy, and they don't have time to develop a chemistry and relationships and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And that kind of makes sense, but at the same time, isn't that true of every national football side?
Well, it is, and I think, arguably, this time around, failing was perhaps more likely than it was, say, back in 2016, when at the time you had like 3 significant Polish internationals all playing for the same club in Germany, and in like defence, midfield, and attack. So there was actually, there was a ready-made, fully coached spine to the team, if you like. Of course, sadly, other components didn't make their full contribution, and but like I say, that game against Portugal in the quarters, they really, they were out of the blocks like with meaning, but lost it.
Let me give some context to the conversation. I want to add some numbers about money. I found some information online about the amount of money involved here, because people always want to know, how much do our players get paid for this embarrassing performance? It's humiliating, and the amount of money involved is ridiculous. In fact, the Polish players, because of their exit at the group stage, they got nothing. They got nothing. The deal with PZPN, which is, again, the governing body in Poland, the team would earn up to 10 million zlotys to be shared among the players, 10 million, if they made it out of the group stage, but they didn't, right? So let me just catch up here with this article I'm looking at. So yeah, the PZPN got some money for organizational things, travel costs and whatnot, but they got 750,000 euro because of the 1-1 draw with Spain, and that's it. That's from the UEFA to PZPN. The players get nothing, and the coach. We didn't talk about the coach. This Portuguese guy named Paulo Sousa took over not too long ago. His salary. You want to guess what his salary is? As the coach of the national team.
It.
Josh?
Actually, no, I have no idea.
840,000 euro, which is at the low end. Your managers of France and Germany are making around 3 million euro. Your manager of England makes 2 million euro. So it's on the low end of the market, but it's still a lot of money to manage a football team, especially when you come back from the Euros with a draw and 2 losses. I wanted to say earlier, Josh, what did you think? You mentioned this moment against Sweden, where they had this, everything looked like it was going in the right direction. The moment that I took away from the group stage was the aftermath of the draw with Spain. They were celebrating like they just won something, and this was not a good look.
I think this was actually,
at all.
I found this absolutely hilarious, and not without a degree of kind of self-irony, because, famously Tottenham kind of released a DVD of an admittedly very exciting draw against Arsenal many years ago.
It's a draw.
Yeah. Well, it would have been a loss if it hadn't been for the last closing minutes. But the point was, I was in a pub after the game finished because there was a band playing. And the screen. No, there was a band playing in the pub.
But you were after the Poland-Spain match.
Yes,
not the Arsenal-Tottenham match from years ago. Okay.
Yes, sorry to clarify. And the TV screen was still on in the background. And for fully 2 hours after the match had finished, and while the band was playing and people were dancing, singing, drinking, you saw Lewandowski's equaliser repeated over and over again from different angles. You had various different talking heads nodding sagely and kind of backwards and forwards. There was the people pitch side with their brightly coloured microphones, and there were the people in the studio with their, elegantly expensive, slightly casual look. And it was just... It's like,
you really paint a picture, Josh.
Draw,
exactly, and it wasn't a good look because, again, it was a draw, and it kind of speaks to the mentality. It speaks to where their mind is. Yay, we drew against Spain, which, okay, in all fairness, that is a great accomplishment. But given the context, you lost, against Slovakia. You need to take 4 points off of Sweden. Just relax a little bit. Don't go celebrating like you've accomplished anything. It just was not a good look at all. I think it turned a lot of people off, and it's just surprising to me that there weren't professionals in the clubhouse or on the bench or whatever you want to say. Lewandowski, for example, would say, "Hey guys, all right, good job, but we're not done by a long shot. So let's come back down to earth."
Yeah, it was Sweden who topped the group comfortably.
Yeah, so just odd. One more thing before we wrap this up, and Gabby, I'm sure you've noticed this. I think a big part of this cyclical, let's call it a cyclical, what's the word? Sickness. Every 2 years, the whole country goes, you suck. And then a year later, it's like, oh, come on, Poland, we're going to do it this time. Oh, I forgot to mention, by the way, World Cup qualifying for Qatar, I can't believe I said that, starts at the beginning of September. And so
oh my God, it's not finished.
So 2 months from now, we're right back in it. And we're gonna have a memory, reset. We're going to forget any of this ever happened, and we're going to start all over again.
I mean, just as a very rough rule of thumb, Gabby, it's kind of usually every 2 years. You have Euros, then 2 years, then World Cup. But then, of course, it's all been
qualifying in between those.
It never ends.
Well, yeah, exactly. Qualifying.
But what I wanted to ask you, Gabby, is that I'm sure you've noticed on television, and I think this is part of the hype. This is part of what gets people it makes it easier to reset and forget what happened last time. Every goddamn beer company, everybody that sells electronics, big screen TVs, every kind of, product that's even kind of sort of related to getting together, like Lay's potato chips. Everybody has that cliched commercial where people are wearing the red and white, and it's always generic, by the way, because otherwise they'd have to pay a licensing fee for having the actual Polish strip. And it's, POLSKA GOLA, and everybody, they stand up and cheer and knock the bowl of chips over when they score the goal. And, this happens constantly. And so there's this very strong media presence, especially in TV, that kind of promotes this football. Kind of what you mentioned earlier is, I think, as part of a good times. It's not really about football; it's about the social aspect of it.
Well, exactly. Yeah, that's what I was saying before. That's why you can't take football away from the Poles, because it's not really about the football, is it? It's about having a few beers, having an excuse to sit in front of the TV with your family and kids, get emotional for some reason, because let's face it, it's not something that the Poles do very often, and just express yourself for the qualifiers.
That's the funny thing. The emotion that they do express is, in the commercials, it's joy, and in fact, at home in their living rooms, it's kurwa mać. That's what the real emotion that comes out.
But it's still emotion, isn't it?
True.
It's still emotion.
Well, this is obviously kind of completely derailing your closing portion, but let's just go a quick word, because of partly out of respect for Gabby, but for Hungary in the 50s. Hungary were undoubtedly the world's champions of football. Yeah. Not only were they the best footballing nation in the world, they were an inspiration to generations of younger footballers.
And 10 million people, so a tiny little landlocked country, and but what is that? I mean, just to come back on to move away from the closing point I was trying to make and to reignite the conversation. I mean, earlier I mentioned North Macedonia. They had a spirit, they had a determination. Hungary had the same thing in this tournament, especially in the match against Germany.
I was really surprised, because I pretty much feel about the Hungarian team the way that I think a lot of Poles feel about the Polish team. We're not going to do it. It's going to be rubbish.
So it's good to see them fighting,
but it was really, really good to see at one stage winning against France. WTF.
But it's about spirit. And Josh, you know very well that the England side constantly gets criticized for being indifferent and not having enough fire and passion and whatnot, which is probably a valid point. But
it is, considering the amount of money they make.
Well, that's true. But I know it's easy to dismiss it as being, corny and kind of ridiculous. But I mean, the dedication and the heart really does matter, and it seems that it can make up for a lack of talent sometimes.
No, of course it can.
And Poland just doesn't seem to have that fire.
Yeah, look at Leicester City in the.
It's the three things, isn't it? You need the team to be working together, which Poland doesn't really have, and the UK doesn't really have, but Hungary did have. You need the talent, which, England maybe have a little bit, but not that much, and then the money behind it as well. So I think it's magic triangle, isn't it?
Is it? Let's turn it into a square. Maybe one more question for Josh, and then we're going to wrap this up. I promise. Do you think it's possible that having a superstar, a megastar, a Lewandowski, a Ronaldo, obviously there are benefits, but do you think there's an other side that's full of negatives, like the team becomes too focused on one guy, too reliant on one guy? Isn't there a downside to that as well?
No, absolutely there is. But I mean, what a canny manager does, of course, is that you try to accentuate all the positives about that, and then you try, on the one hand, it's like, don't just pass it to him all the time, but he is going to be running forward and finding space. Expect him to be there and pass the ball there. I mean, one of the problems between, absolute kind of elite world-class, one of the differences between elite world-class footballers and very, very good professional footballers is this thing of accuracy and speed of reaction, really. And, your Lewandowskis or your Cristiano Ronaldos, your Harry Kanes, they can do a pinpoint pass over a really, really long distance. But of course, their job isn't to be passing to other players. Their job is to be receiving those passes. And, this is a bit of that kind of cliche. Oh, he's just not receiving the service. Well, this is absolutely a big part of it all.
Well, as I said, World Cup qualifying for the tournament in Qatar starts in September. Poland is in a group
This makes you want to clear your throat every
it's just
time you
weird.
say that. Doesn't it?
In a group with England, and they're always in a group with England. They're in a group with England, Hungary, Albania, Andorra, and San Marino. They're always in a group with San Marino
like it'll be an
too.
interesting group.
Oh, well, it'd be hysterical if England come bottom of that group.
So
Forward to that.
the cynicism and the disappointment of their performance at the Euros will be washed away by then, and we're going to reset, and we're all going to be convinced that Poland is definitely going to qualify for the World Cup and probably win it as well. We'll see. Well, anyway, that's our take on the recent history of the Polish national team. Thanks for listening, everybody. KrakCast.pl is the website. Check it out, and we'll catch you next time on the KrakCast.
Don't forget to switch the lights off.